Most e-commerce gurus tell you that visiting your factory is the ultimate power move. They say it's how you build a relationship and guarantee quality. They are dead wrong, and that advice is exactly how you lose your entire life savings in a single shipment. While you're sitting in that boardroom sipping tea with the owner, you aren't an importer, you're a mark. Every VIP dinner, every exclusive tour of their cleanest production line, and every handshake is a calculated psychological weapon. It's designed to trigger a biological sense of obligation that makes it physically painful for you to say "oh" when they swap your high-grade components for cheap scrap the moment you board your flight home. By the time you realize you've been played, your containers are already on the water, your customers are demanding refunds, and your brand is dead. Today, we're exposing the inspection illusion. I'm going to show you the psychological magic tricks factories use to blindfold you in broad daylight, and the brutal, data-driven strategy you need to use instead if you want to survive the next 12 months. The first thing you have to understand is the halo effect. When you walk into a factory and the lobby is marble, the staff is wearing matching uniforms, and the showroom is filled with awards, your brain automatically fills in the blanks. You assume that if the front office looks like a Fortune 500 company, the assembly line must be equally flawless. But here is the reality of global sourcing. The showroom is a sales tool. The production line is a cost center. I have seen importers sign million-dollar contracts because they were impressed by a factory's automated machinery, only to find out 3 months later that their specific order was subcontracted out to a shadow factory in another province, a dark, dusty workshop with zero quality control. Because the main factory was over-leveraged, the supplier didn't lie to you. They just showed you the 5% of their business that works perfectly while hiding the 95% that's falling apart. Then there's the reciprocity trap. This is the most dangerous psychological weapon in a supplier's arsenal. From the moment you land, you are overwhelmed with hospitality. The private driver, the 12-course banquet, the expensive gifts. These aren't just gestures of friendship, they are strategic investments. Human psychology is hardwired to return a favor. When that supplier takes you to an $800 dinner, they are buying your silence for the next morning. When you're standing on that factory floor at 9 a.m. and you spot a minor defect in the stitching or a slight variation in the plastic color, your brain is going to scream at you, "Don't be the difficult guest. Don't ruin the relationship after they were so nice to you." So you stay quiet, you tell yourself it's within tolerance, you ignore your gut, and that minor defect is the crack in the dam that eventually floods your business with returns. If you want to survive this game, you have to learn how to kill the tourist inside you and become an auditor. And that starts with understanding that a factory visit isn't a celebration, it's a battlefield. To win on this battlefield, you have to recognize the expert's shield. When you start asking the hard questions, the ones about raw material sources or the specific turnover rate of their floor staff, the mood in the room will shift. Suddenly, the friendly supplier becomes the industry veteran who's been doing this for 20 years. They'll use technical jargon to drown out your concerns, or worse, they'll use the face defense. In many manufacturing hubs, saving face is a powerful social currency. By pointing out a flaw, they'll make you feel like you're insulting their honor. This is a calculated redirection. They are banking on the fact that you don't want to cause a scene or seem uneducated about the manufacturing process. But here is the brutal truth. The moment you prioritize their feelings over your product specifications, you have already lost. This leads us to the sunk cost delusion. You've spent $2,000 on a flight. You've spent 40 hours in transit. You've missed time with your family. Your brain is desperate for this trip to be a success. You are psychologically primed to see what you want to see. This is why so many importers walk away from a factory visit claiming everything was perfect, only to be blindsided by a 30% defect rate when the goods arrive. You weren't auditing the factory, you were justifying your travel expenses. Now we have to talk about the shadow line. This is the most sophisticated trick in the book. A factory knows you're coming weeks in advance. They have time to clean the floors, put their most skilled workers on line number 1, and ensure that every machine is running at peak efficiency for the 4 hours you're on site. They are performing a play, and you are the audience. The minute you leave for the airport, the performance ends. The skilled workers move back to the high-margin clients. The floors get cluttered and the shortcuts begin. If your quality control strategy relies on what you saw during a scheduled supervised tour, you aren't running a business, you're participating in a fantasy. So, how do you break the illusion? How do you strip away the hospitality, the jargon, and the staged performances to see the raw, unfiltered reality of your production? It requires a total shift in strategy, moving away from the VIP visit and toward a system of radical, data-driven transparency that doesn't care about face or friendship. The strategy to break the illusion starts with the surprise audit. If you want to see the real factory, you don't book a tour, you send an unannounced third-party inspector. While the supplier is busy preparing a banquet for you, a professional auditor is walking through the back gate at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, checking the humidity levels in the warehouse and the calibration logs on the injection molds. A professional inspector doesn't have a relationship to protect. They don't care about the $800 dinner, they only care about the data on their clipboard. You must also implement blind sampling. Never, under any circumstances, allow the factory to hand-pick the units you inspect during your visit. That is like letting a student pick the questions for their own final exam. You, or your agent, must pull units at random from the middle of the pallet, from the bottom of the stack, and from the very end of the production line. If the factory pushes back or claims those units aren't ready for review, you've just found your first major red flag. The final pillar of dismantling the illusion is contractual consequences. All the hospitality in the world shouldn't save a supplier from a predefined penalty. Your purchase order must explicitly state that if a third-party inspection fails, the factory pays for the re-inspection. If the defect rate exceeds 2%, they replace the units at their own cost before the ship date. When you put the financial risk back on the factory, the psychological games stop working because the math no longer adds up for them. You have to realize that a healthy manufacturing relationship isn't built on tea and handshakes, it's built on the mutual fear of loss. They need to know that you are willing to walk away, and you need to know that your quality standards are being met by data, not by a feeling you got while walking a clean floor. The inspection illusion is designed to make you feel comfortable, but in the world of high-stakes sourcing, comfort is a luxury you cannot afford. You don't need a friend in a factory. You need a partner who respects your standards more than they value your politeness. Switch from being a visitor to being an authority. Stop looking at the marble floors and start looking at the inspection reports. That is how you stop the bleeding, protect your brand, and finally escape the sourcing trap. The reality is that once you've dismantled the illusion, the power dynamic shifts. This is where most importers get scared. They worry that being too tough will drive the supplier away. But the opposite is true. The best factories in the world actually prefer working with rigid, data-driven clients. They want the clear specifications, the hard boundaries, and the professional inspections because it proves they are better than their cut-rate competitors. If a supplier fights you on third-party audits or becomes offended by your penalty clauses, they aren't a partner, they're a liability. Their offense is a smokescreen. By standing your ground, you aren't just protecting one shipment, you are training that factory on how to treat your brand for the next 5 years. You are sending a clear signal that your friendship cannot be bought with a VIP dinner, but it can be earned through consistent, flawless execution. The goal isn't to stop visiting factories entirely. There is immense value in understanding the geography, the logistics, and the people behind your product. But you must go in with your eyes wide open. You go in to verify the systems, not to be seduced by the showroom. You go in as the CEO of a brand that demands excellence, not as a tourist looking for a photo op. This shift in mindset is the cheat code to scaling. It's what separates the hobbyists who get wiped out by a bad batch from the titans who build empires. When you stop falling for the inspection illusion, you stop gambling with your capital. You replace hope with certainty and rapport with results. Now you have two ways to move forward. You can take the framework I've given you today and build these systems yourself, hiring the inspectors, drafting the penalty clauses, and managing the psychological warfare on the ground. It's a steep learning curve, but it's the only way to play the game properly. Or you can bypass the learning curve entirely. At Infinite Panda, we are your boots on the ground. We don't care about the banquets or the marble lobbies. We care about the specifications and the data. We've spent years navigating these psychological traps so you don't have to. If you want a partner in China who acts as your shield and ensures your brand never falls victim to the inspection illusion, click the link in the description or visit our website to see how we can secure your supply chain. Remember, your customers don't care how nice your supplier was to you. They care that the product they paid for works exactly as promised. Don't let a $100 dinner cost you a $100,000 reputation. Build your systems, trust the data, or let us handle the heavy lifting. That's how you win.